The government has performed yet another U-turn on its flagship welfare scheme, Universal Credit. The policy merges 6 different benefits into a single welfare payment. MPs were due to vote on extending Universal Credit to a further 3 million people. At the weekend, we heard that number is going to be cut to just 10,000 people. That's one thing. But today, the Work and Pensions Secretary Amber Rudd announced another change. People on Universal Credit can claim extra payments for each child they have. Next month, a cap was due to be introduced to limit these payments to the first 2 children only. That's been scrapped, but only for people who already have children. Critics say despite the change, the fundamental principle of capping payments at 2 children for future claimants still exists. They say it's the poorest families who'll be hit the worst and that it is children who will ultimately suffer. They say the dramatic reduction in the rollout shows the whole scheme is broken. The government says it still plans to get all claimants onto Universal Credit by 2023 as intended. It maintains that the motives behind it remain unchanged. Remember, it was Ian Duncan Smith's idea. Simplifies a vastly complex welfare system and is designed to make it easier for people to get back into work without suddenly losing most of their payments. We'd love your Universal Credit story. 08000 288 291. Ed Davies is Policy Director at the Centre for Social Justice. Good afternoon.
Hi there.
Alfie Stirling is the Head of Economics at the New Economics Foundation. I'll start with you, Alfie. What do you think of this?
Well, I mean, the policy itself is welcome, but it really is quite a small change in the context of a really big reform to welfare system. So, this is now saying that it used to be the case that all families coming onto Universal Credit, if they had more than 2 children, they wouldn't receive a payment for that third and subsequent children. Now what we're seeing from government is that if your child was born before 17th of April, your subsequent third child, then you will now receive a payment. This is going to affect...
So it's about 80, is it 2017 or 28?
April 2017.
So it's 18 months ago, basically, yeah. Then you will still get the payment, but you can't now have children and claim for them.
Exactly. So 15,000 families, this is good news for them, and that's really welcome. But there's 70,000 families who will continue to be affected by the cap on the child element, and they stand to lose around £2,500 up to £3,000 on average per year.
And you think that's a bad thing?
And that's a bad thing because these people are struggling. They're struggling to get into work. They're struggling to make ends meet, and they're going into arrears and further debt. And that is what is driving poverty and what's driving child poverty at the moment.
At a certain point, Ed Davis, we're going to be having to say this whole scheme has just got to be pulled, aren't we?
No, I certainly hope not. I think, as Alfie said there, I think actually the change today is actually, it's not a huge one, but it's a really important one, and particularly for families who this affects, this will be a really positive thing. So that's good. And I think actually what this does symbolise more than anything else is that Amber Rudd, who's the new Secretary of State overseeing this, is willing to listen to where there are problems and make changes. So it's actually...
Well, she might be panicking after Windrush, which she was blamed for.
Well, I hope it's nothing to do with that. I hope what it is, and I suspect what it is actually there are a lot of really good things about Universal Credit and design. The fact that it does simplify it, the fact that more people are getting into work, and we're looking at 200,000 more people finding work through this. So actually she's saying this is a good thing, this is important, I'm going to make the changes where they're needed and show I've got real confidence in this.
So Alfie, is it in general, is it okay, Universal Credit? Is it going in the right direction, or do you think actually after about 6 or 7 changes on the hoof, it should be pulled?
I'm afraid I think it should be pulled. There are 3 ways you can assess Universal Credit, and people tend to get focused on just the first of those, which is it being implemented correctly? And that's clearly been a bit of a disaster. We're seeing it over budget, it's late, 25% of claimants are receiving payments late. But that's just the implementation. Are they doing the policy they said they would do? There's also a design question. Is this delivering on the principles it's set out? And then again, it's failing. If you're a minimum wage earner and you've got 2 children and you're trying to increase your pay by £1, because Universal Credit takes money back out of your benefits as you earn more money, you only keep 25p in the pound for an extra hour of earning. So it's not actually delivering on the principle of making work pay, incentivising people going into work. It's failing on that principle. But there's a third bucket, if you like, and that's, are the principles right? And I argue that actually it doesn't focus enough on welfare provision as a safety net to alleviate poverty. The IFS are now expecting child poverty to increase by 3% over the next 2 years as a result of Universal Credit. So no, I think it does need to be fundamentally rethought because it's failing both in implementation in terms of its principles and whether it's even delivering on its own principles.
So, the key one you mentioned there, which struck me, was to do with the fact that it doesn't seem to be paying people to go back into work. Ed, is that right?
No, absolutely not. And in fact, this is where it is really important, because under the old system, you had a situation where you had effective tax rates of over 90%. You had a lot of people trapped on 16 hours. The new system is lower, so you have this thing called a taper rate, where it tapers away your income at about 63% at present. Now, I would happily see that come lower. I think it was originally designed at 55. Let's invest in this and bring it down, but it is considerably better than what went before.
Understood. Sorry to interrupt you, Ed, but it's just that in the end, if someone is on benefits and they move to work, that junction between them claiming benefits and getting a paycheck is impossible, isn't it, to get a set of rules for, because every single situation is different.
It isn't. And actually, that's what this taper rate thing tries to do.
Yeah.
It tries to say, actually, gradually remove the benefit, don't strip it away. So in past, you had people on 16 hours. Suddenly, if they went to 17, they got a 95% tax rate. They didn't take work. When we speak to employers, when we go to even things like women's refuges, they say we could get women out of difficult situations, but we couldn't get them above 16 hours work.
Tapers are
now
complicated. You think the taper rate isn't working, Alfie?
I think the problem that Ed's got is, being involved with the design of universal credit, which was a lot stronger than what is actually now being implemented. And Ed's right, the initial design was 55p in the pound of your benefit to be taken away as you earn more money. That changed to 65p in 2015 when Osborne took £4 billion out of universal credit and really prevented it from being able to deliver on its own terms. And then since then, a small amount, 700 million, got put back in, and now the taper rate's at 63%. But that's way higher than the initial design. That's one of the reasons it's failing to deliver on its own terms.
Well, is it right in principle to cap people if they have a third child, Ed?
Yeah, this is a really interesting conversation, actually, because this comes down to the absolute core of what we think our welfare system should provide. And this sort of balance between fairness and compassion. Should, for example, a single mum with 2 kids working minimum wage, cleaning somewhere at night, pay more for me and my choices if I lose my job with three kids? And that is a hard conversation. I think from my point of view, if money's no object, yeah, let's support as many people as we can. These are people in a hard situation. But if I had £1 billion to spend on universal credit, actually, I think there are certain things that are more important. We're seeing a lot of people in food banks with mental health conditions. We're seeing people coming in with huge debts. We're seeing people with addiction problems. Can we invest in the support, the human support for these human problems, which actually we're seeing more of a problem at the moment?
Alfie?
I don't think it's a hard question at all. It's incredibly simple. It's not right to cap benefit payments for third and fourth and sixth children. It discriminates.
But what if it acts as an incentive to have those children?
If the system is already preventing people from moving into work because of the money it's taking away, this sort of changes at the edges is not going to be the main driver of going back into work. The point is, though, it's discriminating against people based on their personal choices, and that often affects BME groups, affects particular types of family structure over others, and it's discrimination.
But your personal choice is fine if you can afford your personal choice, but if you're asking the state to underwrite the cost of your personal choice, it's different, isn't it? Then we all get a say in it.
Nobody asks the state to pay for their children. Most people on universal credit move on temporarily and move off again as they move into work. It's a temporary safety net to help people move from one career to the other. To be able to cushion out shocks to their income across their lifetime.
Doesn't the simplicity of it appeal to you, though? You take 6 benefits and you roll them into one, and it's one computer and one keystroke for each person. Isn't that better?
Yeah, I think that in terms of simplicity and that initial kind of conception of the idea that let's roll these benefits together, make it more straightforward for people to use, was absolutely right. But that was an early 2013, 2014 idea, which has now been totally lost in complex implementation, in huge amounts of money that's been taken out of those benefits at the same time. So all well and good to collapse benefits together, but if you also shrink all of them and make them all skeletons of their original intention, they're no longer delivering the objective they were supposed to, then you're confusing two things, and simplicity gets drowned out.
Ed, defend it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the danger is we see the problems here and say, let's throw it away. Let's not forget, 2/3 of people coming onto universal credit come with debt. We're talking £6 billion worth of debt. The old system was not good on that either. So actually, what we've got here is a better system. Let's invest in it, and that's what's happening today. So we can change the rate at which.
Is it being killed by lack of money? Is that what's happening?
The lack of money that came out in 2015 was a problem. It's not being killed by it, but it's a problem. But the fundamental, and this is the absolute key, is that when this rolls out, you'll have 200,000 more people finding work as a result. If we stop it, we are knowingly stopping the life chances of 200,000 people and their families. The answer is not to stop it, it's to invest in this, make it work as well as it can. And that's what the announcements today, I think, are trying to do. I think this is good news.
Thank you very much, Ed Davies, defending Universal Credit Policy Director at the Centre for Social Justice, and Alfie Stirling, much more doubtful, Head of Economics at the New Economics Foundation.